Woo! Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another show of Grow Your Grass Off. Today's special guest is us. So let's get into talking about who we are and give me a little background.
I'm Lana. I was raised in Texas and I now live in Seattle. Started gardening probably 10 plus years ago with my dad and my little daughter. We had a pretty big garden at my old house in my backyard. We grew squash, pumpkins, corn, cucumbers, everything. A couple seasons rotated through. And then I'm just a busy mom, so work full time and kind of got away from that and moved to another place now. And through the COVID, work kind of slowed down, and my neighbor, who has about 8 beautiful garden beds, and she shared some veggies and stuff, and our kids play. And so she texts me and she's like, "Do you want some starts?" I was like, "Sure. Okay." So I was like, "Okay." So she brought me over this huge box of starts, which was like an entire garden. And I'm like, "What am I supposed to do with this box of these starts? I don't even have, space." And so we have a huge yard. So of course, first time, well, not first time, but decided I wanted to just, versus building a bed, kind of just went online, found one, prefab piece of crap, bought it, put it together, put everything, well, almost everything in it, thinking, okay, well, this will be good. Now, that same season went on to add 4+ beds, built them. So now we have about 8 beds full of beautiful, beautiful vegetables. We also have a small orchard in the back near our property with about 8 to 9 fruit trees, varying from plum, cherry. We have I believe it is a grafted 5 apple tree, apricot, tons and tons and tons of vegetables and perennials through our entire yard. And so with things slowing down, I just had more time to focus on my yard and things here on the home. And so since then, in the last 2-3 years, have added even more. We now have about 5 chickens, 2 rabbits, and an abundance of eggs. And so just grateful that my life has slowed so that I can focus on my home, my kids, and just growing food for my family and also for my neighbors. I share a ton of stuff with them. I usually just leave little bags on their front porches with herbs, vegetables. Now I'm leaving eggs, like little breakfast things. So just sharing with my community, and that's kind of my goal of what I wanted to do, why I wanted to grow. So how about you, Brandon?
Yeah, so I originally moved to Costa Rica about 2 years ago, so that's kind of been my path. But before that, I lived in the States, and we had a home in Oregon, in Southern Oregon. Joe, our previous guest, he's in the Little Applegate Valley, and so that's where I was before that. And then my family is kind of based out of Salt Lake City, Utah, so that's kind of where my hub is in that sense. But yeah, I've lived in a lot of different places. Kind of grew up in Alabama, and then went to college and so forth back east, North Carolina and Maryland and stuff. So I've been able to travel a lot, which I really enjoy. And so, but for me, in terms of the permaculture journey that I had, I ended up doing an internship in Montana, and so that kind of my life before that was all soccer. I basically started playing soccer when I was 5. So I started out just wanting to play pro, and I took it to a pretty good level, played college, played a little pro, and then I ended up just deciding in, I think it was 2009 or so, just to, okay, let's shift gears, because I always wanted to find something in college that I felt sort of represented what I really wanted to do the most in life, and I didn't find it. remember sitting down with my biology teacher, and I was like, I love designing, and I love it in the, biological sense. So how can we design something in nature? And I was kind of hitting around it, and he was kind of doing Venn diagrams with me and stuff, but we couldn't figure out something that sort of fit with the majors that were at that school. So I ended up getting a degree in information systems, and so computers and tech were fun. It was always interesting. It was always evolving. So you always had to kind of learn new things, which I love. But at the end of the day, it was a systems sort of approach, which is fun. And then fast forward, to about 2009, I realized and found out about permaculture in that internship in Montana, and sort of the gates just opened from there. It was just like, okay, this is sort of my melding of those sort of the systems approach with nature. And so I was able to say, okay, let me just dive in and learn as much as I can. So I went to RDI, Regenerative Design Institute in Bolinas, California, and that was with Penny Livingston Stark and a lot of fun people up there in kind of the Bay Area in general, but just north of that. And so that's where my journey began, and I stayed there and did a long internship. I did other farm opportunities like woofing and internships and stuff. So that's where I sort of began and got the permaculture bug. And so from there, I met my wife, and we just moved to Oregon and kind of just got into it. And fast forward another, 10 years, and I'm basically in Costa Rica trying to do it here. So I've got a place where we're developing a fish pond, and we've got our home built, and it's just been an amazing journey. So I kind of have that core foundation is, loving to be a permaculture designer, and loving being outside and just kind of doing everything in terms of experience part. So I like being able to kind of do both. So I love the tech stuff. I love being able to share it with people, but then I love the actual practice and going out there and playing around in the mud. So right now, current projects for me, we've got a casita that we're building so we can share it with more people. Hopefully we can get that online soon, probably in the next couple of months. We've got a fish pond. We've got an orchard that's been planted. Everything's pretty new because it's only been about a year and a half or so, a little bit less. We've got a greenhouse that we put up. It's just different here. There's a lot of fun aspects, and you'd think that, everything is just going to do really well, but it's not always the case. And we just have to adapt. We had another episode with Todd, my neighbor, and that kind of got into some of those topics about kind of what it's like to grow here and so on. But the weather is just nice, and overall, it's nothing. It's sort of a happy medium. So that's something that's really nice. Right now I'm outside, and it's, January 15th, and I'm in a t-shirt. So there's great aspects, but then, it rains a ton. So there's, you can't do all the sort of normal crops that I'm kind of used to necessarily. So those are sort of the high level pieces. For me, the goals that I have is to make an experiential education center, and that's something that I'd love to be able to take permaculture, not necessarily transform it or anything, but just maybe adapt into what I've learned and what I've seen on all the different farms. Maybe repackage, certain aspects in a different way so that people can get those sort of tangible skills, but yet they get some of the theory as well in terms of why we do things and why it's sort of been presented that way. The PDC was fun. I've done a couple PDCs, and I love getting into that, but I feel like in a lot of ways that it gets too much in your mind, and less in practice. So I feel like if we can create, because if our mission, let's say, is to sort of help people grow food and enjoy that process, I think that there's sort of a more of a balance that could be struck with how much we actually get into those skills and share those with people. So I just want to kind of be a hub for that in that way. And the work that we're doing, I think, with GYGO here is special, because that, I think we can kind of develop that out, and how can we really support people in that journey? And I'm really looking forward to putting that together. It's in the early stages, but that's kind of where we're at. Ian, what about you? What do you got going?
Yeah, appreciate it, Brandon. So for me, I have a convoluted, non-traditional background as far as growing food. been interested in plants, growing food, art, music, mechanics, all that kind of stuff for a long time. The common denominator is I like hard work and like to work with my hands. So, like all of us here, I like to get down and, you know, plant
Dirty.
trees and get dirty and fall into bed because I can't move anymore at the end of the day. So, just a brief high level. Trained as a mechanic. I was a mechanic for 9 years at Volkswagen Audi, and then have an undergraduate degree in exercise physiology, doctorate in chiropractic. So I was a physician for 6 years. Been growing food for the last 7 or 8. Really focused the last 3 or 4 years. I have I have 4 kids, so there's a lot of mouths to feed. So that's the primary catalyst for me, wanting to grow as much food as possible. Read a lot of books, watched a lot of videos, have a lot of practical knowledge, especially down here in Florida, where I live. I've recently moved to a bigger plot of land, so I've reset, but I did have quite a bit of food, almost 130 types of edibles in my last backyard. So I'm reproducing that on a larger scale here. I've already got solar on my house. I'll be working on water catchment later this year. I have about 250 plants in pots that I moved from my last house. So I'm pretty much ready to go as far as planting. I just have to get the infrastructure set up. So I'll be chopping. This is controversial and a little hard to say, but I'll be chopping most of the trees that are native in my front yard just because they're pine trees, and I'm trying to make more room for large fruit trees like avocado and stuff like that to create some shade and some structure. Really focusing on aesthetics in the front yard, and then the backyard is gonna be straight jungle. So definitely gonna be incorporating a lot of animals, some that are help close the loop and some that are not so permaculture based. So definitely gonna be getting alpacas and tortoises. I already have chickens and can probably not goats, probably replace those with alpacas, and then maybe some other rare birds. I already have parrots and rabbits, and I just like animals and plants and growing all that and stewarding the land. So the high level goals for this year is to get the front yard set up, get some infrastructure and fencing all fixed in my backyard, and then my chicken coop pretty much done. So getting that up and getting ranging areas and building out multiple food forests in the backyard. So that's kind of the high level of me. What about you, Kevin?
Well, I grew up in Tennessee, and I didn't know anything about food, where food came from, how to grow it. Nobody around me was really growing any food. I never ate a fruit off a tree until I was in my 20s, like right off the tree. And so I was concerned about the problems of the world in a big way, and realized that a lot of it had to do with the way food was produced and our disconnection from nature. And a lot of that was due to our disconnection from food. And I myself was totally disconnected from nature and food. So I said, all right, well, I want to change that. I got to start with myself. And once I started changing it, it was really fun. That was the best thing I ever did. And so I moved I went to school in Florida. And then I shortly after that moved to California, to the San Francisco Bay Area. And I was finding out about permaculture and food and foraging and farming and organic growing and all of that at the same time. So I didn't have, I came from this background, and then I learned about these things. It was all just, to me, nature and food and doing it the right way. So, I started growing gardens and, helping people grow gardens and whatnot. And I was also really into foraging, because that's food that already grows, right? And so basically what happened was I was putting in gardens for people and helping them do it. And they would, bust their butts to grow all the food. And then I'd come back and they just let all the food rot. And then I'd go around, I kind of couch surfed and, it's a little bit, quasi homeless there for a while. And I just walked around a lot, everywhere, neighborhoods, whatnot. And I saw food everywhere rotting on the ground, like fruit trees in California are all over the place. And I like, all right, well, first thing is we need to start eating the food that's already here before we start planting more of it. In urban and suburban situations, really is what I was kind of focused on. So I went full on into the foraging thing, and then I became, a foraging instructor in the Bay Area on my own, and I worked for Forage SF for 10 years. I taught plant foraging classes, mushroom foraging classes. I authored a few books on the subject, and this became kind of known for that. That's, hence you can see when my camera's off, it says Feral Kevin, right? That's my website and my Instagram handle and my YouTube, Feral Kevin, like a feral cat. And so in 2005, I was blessed to get this garden in the Bay Area. This piece of land essentially that I was, it was a children's center that I ran, the garden program there and everything. And I planted this, and this was my food forest and my job for 16 years. So I was able to, make a lot of mistakes and also have a lot of successes. And it turned into kind of like a rare fruit orchard toward the end there. We had chickens and ducks, and, we kept worms and black soldier fly larvae. And there was, it was just a fascinating, place. It's like a wonderland. And I always wanted to do that somewhere else and have it where people could come stay and kind of have it like a park. And I also got into market farming, regenerative market farming. Gosh, that was like 6 or 7 years ago. I really got into that. And I'd always kept like a regular annual garden too. And that's been wonderful. So, but a few years ago, I guess coming up on 2 years now, we moved to Tennessee, where I grew up, from California, and I left my farm and my food forest behind. And now I'm trying to set stuff up here. And, I brought a lot of plants with me from California, and I brought lots of knowledge with me. And I got a small suburban backyard. We have 4 chickens. We have a duck. I've got quite a bit of fruit trees. I have a nursery that is, things need to be moved out of that nursery. There's just too many plants there. I have like 300 something potted plants. I have a bunch of bare root plants in the ground that need to be planted out somewhere. My neighbor's little strip, I'm farming that. I got 4 40-foot beds, like market garden beds. And then the neighbor down the street, I'm farming her land. And there's talk of me farming this other one that's 20 minutes away and trying to work out partnerships with different folks until we're able to get our bigger piece of land. I want to grow orchards. I want to have a nursery. I want to grow as much or if all my own food as possible. I want to get sheep, possibly goats, depending on the situation. I want to have more chickens, more ducks. I want to have meat birds, maybe even some pigs at some point. So there's, I got lots of big goals, and I don't think everybody kind of talked about more specifically what they're planning to do this coming spring. But I would like, maybe we can go back around if you want, but I'll start since you're on me now. So I got a lot of seeds. I got a lot of plants, besides moving all my nursery plants out. I really, like growing unusual things and trying new things. And I got a bunch of seeds from the Experimental Farm Network, and some of which are Joseph Lofthouse seeds that he was a guest on our show not too long ago. And I'm super excited to try some of those landrace varieties and some unusual things. And every year, like needs change, goals change with the garden. A few years ago, it was like, all right, well, what can I grow that I enjoy, but also that I could sell at the market? And, lately things have shifted a lot more toward what do we want to eat? As food prices get higher and, the quality you grow is always so much better. It's like, all right, well, what do we actually need? And it's funny how that changes from year to year a little bit. But in the spring here, I'm going to start very soon, actually, in the greenhouse. I'm going to start, kale and collards. We make a lot of green smoothies, and it's just, you go out there and you just pick off the greens, go in, blend them up in a smoothie. I love that. So those are the cool season crops, and I'm going to try to get those going pretty soon. But for me, the action is really warm season, and I love doing it. And there's always things that I grow every year. I grow purple sweet potatoes. Now I'm into really growing these butternut squash because I got these land race varieties. In summer greens, what we like to grow are Tulsi, which we actually put in smoothies, which is holy basil, Tulsi holy basil. And last year, because it never worked so well in California, I guess the nights were too cool, but it's called Egyptian spinach or malokia. And it loves the hot weather, and that's super nutritious. And we were putting that in smoothies last year. So I'm going to grow that. I saved the seeds last year. I'm going to grow a bunch of that. I grow this herb called popolo, which is my favorite herb. I put it in tacos and salsa and stuff like that. And it loves the heat of the summer. And then tomatoes. Last year, I tried a bunch of tomatoes that were appropriate for the area, and I saved all the seeds for the ones that were successful. So I'm going to regrow those. And, I'm literally could probably have a whole episode of just things that I'm planning on growing, but that's kind of the general idea is that I want to grow things that other people I can trade, give away, like tomatoes. And of course, we loved them too. And then I'm going to try to grow chia, a short, non-day length dependent flowering variety. So I'm going to need more land for that. I'm excited about trying to grow chia and see if I can get any kind of yield out of that. So anyway, it's just really, it's the time of year where I'm really starting to plan. I'm going to go down the basement, go through my seeds. I'll probably make a video about it. Sort of my reasoning behind it. And what'll happen is I'll plant, 10 times more than I have room for. Yeah, I'll be scrambling to either sell those plants or find some place to put them. But that's I love the feeling in spring. I know we're not quite there yet, but of all the potential, my favorite month is May, right? Just because it's warm, things are growing, and there's still all the potential there. So I just love it. I can't wait to have that, everything turn green and start popping. And oh, I forgot to plant cucumbers, not too late. I forgot to plant this, not too late. I love May because of that. I can't wait for May. So anyway, if anybody wants to go back and talk about anything more specific they're planning to do this upcoming season, I guess for you, Brandon, it's year round. But
yeah, overall, it's kind of the same game plan. Just a quick, peek into what I'm sort of planning is I planted the fruit trees first because I figured they'd take the longest to kind of get ready and develop. And so I did a lot of swells and I did sort of the groundworks to deal with water and infrastructure first. And then I've been chipping away at sort of creating the little pockets, to plant the rest of it, the perennials. We got a lot of sloped land, so terraces, and there's just a lot of extra work to be done. So I have to, it's sort of mapped roughly, but I need to kind of get in there with a fine tooth comb and really prep the things well. And it's heavy clay here. So, creating some nice beds and stuff, it's going to require a little bit extra work, but every time we get a pineapple, we plant it, we plant the top, we put in katuk, along to create this massive hedge of katuk that'll hopefully fill in soon. And there's cassava here, like I've showed before, taro, all those perennials. I call them perennials. They're probably, a lot of them aren't technically perennials, but they're easy to grow. You just stick them in the ground, and then they don't need a ton of extra water or anything during this dry season that we're in. So other than that, I've got some herbs and things that are more perennial based. I got cut recently. Can you see that? So I use my comfrey leaves, to kind of help seal up the wound, so I need to really hit that harder, in terms of getting all the herbs and stuff dialed out. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at overall in terms of what I want to plant soon. I just want more leafy greens, things that are easier, more of the stuff we're actually paying for. We get a weekly order that gets delivered, which is really, we're fortunate because it's good food and they just deliver it all the way to where we are. So we go through quite a bit of sort of veggies and fruits and stuff. So I need to get more on the annuals really. And so that's sort of wide open right now. Who wants to go next?
Cool. Have you had katuk? Have you tried it?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It tastes really good, I think.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it's amazing.
From what I hear, it's really good with minerals, and the ants, you can tell, I may have shared this before, but they go for Katuk pretty quickly if they can. I think maybe it has something that they need, It's good stuff.
Yeah, I use it as a substitute for in saute, like fried rice and stuff, instead of using like, a collard or a kale. It's got that nutty, sweet flavor.
Cool.
I'm going to start my greenhouse. I keep saying that, but keep pushing it out. But I think I'm ready. So that's my next step. We still have a lot of rain, so we won't have much growing till, a little bit here. So greenhouse is next. I've got a lot of seeds. I've got some landrace seeds that I order that I'm super excited about. But we just went to the nursery up of a big hill, and at the bottom is a big farm, and they have a local it's kind of like a market. It's called Carpenito's Farm, and so it's a store, but they're open year round with all the perennials, fruit trees, plants, and produce. And so luckily we live right at the top, and so we go there all the time just to get seeds and like everything. So luckily, before the season closed, everything's on sale. So swiped a bunch of stuff, and so we have a ton of seeds. I just need to get out there and we have some stuff in the greenhouse, but I haven't started the whole seed stuff yet. So that's my goal soon, and I'd like to do my own starts instead of Carpenitos, which I love. If I can't grow it, then I want to have somebody else that can grow it, and I will buy it and I will eat it. And so that's why I feel so fortunate to have this farm super close. But just have my own starts, not have to buy all of them. But I focused a lot on lettuces last year, and I was so excited. I had a huge bed, and then we had this crazy 112, 113 degrees, which we don't get in Seattle, and just freaking fried everything. So it's pretty sad. I had a bad little season of that and a bad season of squash just because of, I think, that heat. So I want to focus on way more squash this year. Lots more tomatoes. I think I'm going to do a couple beds of tomatoes because I loved canning them or pickling them, and the neighbors, like the kids, would just come over and eat right off the plants. And so that's my goal. So get my greenhouse going, get it all in the ground. But like I said, it's still pretty icky here. So I think after we get past and into January, I feel like, okay, it's almost spring, but it's really not. But at least we're past December, and all that. So
Right.
I like to take a vacation in February because it's not nice here. So anyways.
Well, that actually reminds me that a lot of people want to get their stuff started super early because that's the way the big nurseries do it. They have like heated greenhouses with fans and everything. And for just my advice for most people is to wait a little bit. If you have a winter area, you don't want to get things going too early, because if it outgrows your little pot and yet it's not warm enough to put it out, it's going to stunt the plant's growth, and you're going to have to keep up potting, and they're just not going to be happy. So I know we all get really eager to get going, but and you read about it because the pros always say, "Oh, we start in January. We start our tomatoes." Like maybe in Florida, right? But in a normal winter area, you don't want to be starting them in January. In my experience, for the average grower, even if you have a little greenhouse, it's too early. So I'm trying to hold back a little bit as well, just because I know that it if you get don't want to be too early.
We're just prepping, Kevin.
Yes, exactly. Planning.
Get it laid out, planning. Yes, it's written planning. It's calendar. Yeah. What do you have, Ian? Besides everything you already have.
Yeah.
I mean, you're still in it, so.
Yeah. I don't stop. Like yesterday, I spent half a day working on the bed in my front yard. So as far as annuals, we had frost here last night. Actually, I woke up and like, ooh. So but everything looks all right. But I mean, I had broccoli, broccolini, kale, mustard greens, herbs, strawberries, and I said kale already, right? And a couple collard. That's what's in there now. So I'll be changing that out probably, March, and doing that stuff, doing other stuff like you're doing, get some squash going and tomatoes, that kind of stuff. But the main thing for spring is trying to get those 17 trees out of my front yard and then get the structure of my front yard in, put in a horseshoe, like a stone horseshoe driveway, the little, what are those things called? Culverts, the drain pipes, right at the end, and then really get the structure in, get as much trees as I can in this year, kind of on the timeline Brandon's doing, get the structure in. That's the main goal of this spring and this entire year. And then hopefully by fall, I can start doing understory and all that stuff. But I probably have about 1/10 of an acre of Florida forest I have to clear out, or at least get all the brush out of before I can do some of my rare tropicals. I have about a 400 or 500 square foot pond. Don't know how many gallons it is, maybe like 4 feet deep, but I'm going to clean all that out, get that structured. And then I have things that are out of zone, like jackfruit and stuff like that. I just want to create some kind of microclimate with boulders and using that pond and having the understory there. And I have 2 large oak trees, so that's where I'm going to be planting all my citrus near that. Because we have a disease in Florida, greening disease, so that's one of the advantages, or one of the, not proven, but it's pretty proven at this point. Proximity to oak leaves, or using foliar teas from oak leaves for citrus to help mitigate some of that issue. So, and then I have a whole bunch of other stuff, again, fencing and getting more animals, and that's pretty much it. I have too much going on, always too many projects. Like I said yesterday, I'm working on a bed that's probably like 1,000 square feet, just trying to get some structure, because my whole front yard's like grass. There's no entry, there's no path, so you have to walk like 5 miles to get to my front door. It's kind of awkward, so I'm trying to make it a little bit more curb appeal, so my house is more approachable and doesn't look like a random house in the middle of a field, essentially. So that's kind of my goals for spring.